Life is growth and growth is change. Each 7-year period takes us into a new cycle. The first 7 years is the period of infancy. The next 7, the period of childhood, representing the beginning of individual responsibility. Now the next 7 represents the period of adolescence. The fourth, this period marks the attainment of full growth. The fifth period is the constructive period, when men begin to acquire property, possessions, a home, and a family. The next, from 35 to 42, is a period of reactions and changes, and this in turn is followed by a period of reconstruction, adjustment, and recuperation, so as to be ready for a new cycle of 7s, beginning with the 50th year. Those familiar with these cycles will not be disturbed when things seem to go wrong, but can apply the principle outlined in this lesson with full assurance that a higher law will invariably control all other laws, and that through an understanding and conscious operation of spiritual law, we can convert every seemingly difficulty into a blessing. So welcome aboard, guys, the Master Key System. We're at part 16, chapter 16, Charles Snell's Master Key System, and I hope you've listened to lectures 1 through 15. 16 is going to be just as impactful and powerful. We're just going to jump right into it. Today, we're going to be talking more about the power of your thought, specifically about visualizing your desired result until the end, seeing it all the way to the point of completion. Wealth is a product of labor. Capital is just an effect, not a cause. It's a servant, not a master, a means, not an end. The most commonly accepted definition of wealth is that it consists of all useful and agreeable things which possess exchange value. Exchange value. It is this exchange value which is the predominant characteristic of wealth. Wealth should then never be desired as an end, but simply as a means of accomplishing an end. Success is contingent upon a higher ideal than the mere accumulation of riches. He who aspires to such success must formulate an ideal for which he is willing to strive. One of the things I like about this statement is consistent with many other gurus and folks in this particular space that I study, particularly in this case, Napoleon Hill. This makes me think about one particular thing that Napoleon talked about all the time, which was establishing for yourself a definite chief aim. So what Snell is saying here is success is contingent upon a higher ideal. That higher ideal, most of the time, doesn't include you. It includes your ability to serve others. So Napoleon Hill's concept of determining a definite chief aim was for 2 reasons. One, I'll refer you to a book I recently read called Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. Very impactful, very powerful. He talked about one of the reasons why most people in the world are not successful during their lives is because they fall into what's called drifting. And drifting is exactly what it sounds like. There's no particular aim, no particular destination, no particular goal. So Napoleon's concept here in determine a definite chief aim, the definite chief aim was to keep the individual from drifting. So you develop a purpose for your life. You develop a purpose within the cycles of your life that we're talking about. So your definite chief aim may change over time, but you always have a definite chief aim. And another point regarding the definite chief aim is it usually requires some sort of definition of why. Why, once you receive this, why do you want this? Why do you want this particular amount of money or this particular career, this particular entrepreneurship? And I think it's important that we understand that we identify what we're going to do with these things. The universe is not necessarily just going to give you riches just to hoard them and have them. That's not what this is about. And a lot of people miss that. A lot of people just want to get a lot of riches, put it in the bank, dig a hole, put it in the ground, and sit on top of the hole. Well, that's not helping anyone. Universe is about flow. Universe is about flow. So think of yourself less of a sink, you're holding stuff, you got to stop in there, you're just holding as much as you can. Think of yourself as a pipe where the universe can just flow through you and out to someone else, always knowing that more is coming. So your cup is running over. And what do you do with the parts that are running over. Of course, you give it to someone else. You give it to someone else. So we're going to talk a little bit more. I'm going to do a separate lecture on definite chief aim. We're going to get into Napoleon Hill, but I don't want to branch off too much here with Charles Honnell. This just came to my attention in terms of these are very similar ideologies, and obviously because they both work. And Honnell and Napoleon obviously agree, determining a definite chief aim. Honnell's speech is a success contingent upon a higher ideal, something other than yourself, an ability to affect positively your local neighborhoods, kids in your area, seniors, whatever it is. You must be in the business of helping others. Such an ideal in mind, keeping such an ideal in mind, the ways and the means can and will be provided, but the mistake must not be made of substituting the means for the end. There must be a definite fixed purpose and ideal. Again, definite chief aim. Prentice Mulford said, "The man of success is the man possessed of the greatest spiritual understanding, and every great fortune comes of superior and truly spiritual power." End quote. Unfortunately, there are those who fail to recognize this power. They forget that Andrew Carnegie, for example, his mother had to help support the family when they came to America. That Harriman's father was a poor clergyman and made only $200 a year in salary. That Sir Thomas Lipton started with only 25 cents. These men had no other power to depend upon, but it did not fail them. And he's saying, listen, if you think that these folks started off with silver spoons in their mouth, you're wrong. Most of the time, that is not the case. We project on to people what we think and how we think things happen, and we do not know the details. He's saying here, many of the folks who amassed great wealth, they did it from meager means, and they did it using these spiritual principles. The power to create depends entirely upon spiritual power. There are 3 steps involved. We talked about this before in earlier lectures: idealization, visualization, and then materialization. Every captain of industry depends upon this power exclusively. It's an article in Everyday's magazine. Henry Flagler, the Standard Oil multimillionaire, admitted that the secret to his success was his power to see a thing to its completeness. Now that's what we're talking about today, to visualize your desired result all the way until it's done and completed. The following conversation with the reporter shows his power of idealization, concentration, and visualization, all spiritual powers. You have these powers as well. Quote, do you actually visualize yourself throughout the entire process? Do you actually vision to yourself the whole thing? I mean, do you or could you really close your eyes and see the tracks and the trains running and hear the whistles blowing? Do you go as far as that? His response, yes. Question, how clearly? His response, very clearly, very clearly. Now, the last few exercises we've had may seem redundant in that we are going into our quiet place, our meditative posture, and we are being still and we are concentrating and we are thinking about our desired end result in greater and greater detail. Why? Because the more we impregnate, the more that we program our subconscious mind, the greater the propensity for our thoughts to materialize, and it is a process. So you must see it continuously. To see it one time is not enough. You must continually build this build this building in your mind, build this relationship in your mind, build this entrepreneurship in your mind. It is what energizes you and takes you out throughout your day. Now, thought is plastic. It's the plastic material with which we build images of our growing conception of life. Just what I was talking about. Use determines its existence. As in all other things, our ability to recognize it and use it properly is a necessary condition for attainment. You'll notice in Honnell's speech that he likes to talk about, specific scientific laws as it relates to governing processes within, this particular realm. But in addition to that, he's careful to continue to point out that knowledge does not apply itself and that proper application is always necessary. In other words, as a teacher, he could probably tell you a number of things, but if you do not apply it correctly, it's probably not going to work. So here he's saying, As in all other things, our ability to recognize it and use it properly is the necessary condition for its attainment. So we all have the ability to think. We all have the ability, to visualize. But here, the master key, we're trying to understand how to do these things appropriately and properly to obtain the end results desired. Premature wealth is but the forerunner of humiliation and disaster, because we cannot permanently retain anything which we do not merit or which we have not earned. So we could talk about people who've won the lottery and have lost their fortune within a few years. But I think if you're on this particular spiritual journey, you listen to lectures like this, reading different content similar to this, then you understand that as your consciousness rises, your abundance will rise, and you do not want one without the other. Why? Because you will not have the consciousness it is needed in order to sustain the abundance. If you just dump a whole lot of money on, someone, they will think, this is the answer to all of my problems. But quite honestly, it really is not. It probably is going to be the gateway to many more. Why? You do not have the consciousness it takes to sustain it or to utilize it in a proper way. So for example, if you have a drug problem and you have very little money, then it's only so many drugs you can take. But if you have a lot of money, all of a sudden, if you have a lot of money, you win the lottery, you're drafted into the NBA, NFL, or whatever, and you don't have the consciousness it takes to be beyond these types of, problematic behavior, then the chances are it could get worse, could get much worse, because you have access to much more things. So my personal perspective on this matter, I'm not against people playing the lottery. I think particularly in my state, the lottery does a lot of good in terms of education and things like that. So I'm not against people playing the lottery, but fundamentally, I think people need to understand that anything that is get rich quick can and will be problematic. It can and will be problematic. That's all I'm going to say on that. How then are we to control thought? What is the process? To think is to create a thought, but the result of the thought will depend upon its form, its quality, and its vitality. The form will depend upon the mental images from which it emanates. The form will depend upon the mental images which it emanates. What are you thinking about? This will depend upon the depth of the impression, the predominance of the idea, the clarity of the vision, the boldness of the image. The quality depends upon its substance, and this depends upon the material which the mind is composed. If this material has been woven from thoughts of vigor, strength, courage, determination, the thought will then possess these qualities. And finally, the vitality depends upon the feeling with which the thought is impregnated. So when we are thinking these thoughts, which is great because we're using our imagination initially, and then we dig a little deeper, we begin to visualize, and we create this really strong ideal. This is our blueprint. This is our desired result. So we have that picture in our mind, and every day we're constructing it more and more. It's getting more vivid, it's getting sharper, more detail, okay? And I've said to you in the past, one of the things that you want to do to really bring it into fruition, really jumpstart the process, is to impregnate that idea, that thought, with the feeling, with feelings. So I've quoted Neville Goddard in the past about his ideal of living in the inn. So how does it feel? So let's say you're imagining for a home. How many times throughout your day do you walk through your new home in your mind? And can you feel what it feels like to be there? The feeling is as important as it is to see it. The feeling is what's going to bring the components to you, the feeling. Because the universe doesn't identify with what you say, it identifies with what you feel. It identifies with what you feel. Why? Because you're energy, and you're going to draw to you on a certain vibratory level what you feel. Not what you say. Many people say one thing, but they're actually internalizing something else. And so they never from a in-game standpoint, they never really materialize the thing that they want because really they're feeling something different. Now again, if the thought is constructive, it will possess vitality, it will have life, it will grow, develop, expand, it will be creative. It will attract to itself everything necessary for its complete development. The importance of that feeling. If the thought is destructive, of course, it will have within itself a germ of its own dissolution. It will die, but in the process of dying, it will bring sickness, disease, and every other form of discord. So again, it's important for us to create, yes, you guessed it, a positive habitual thought pattern. Good and evil are not entities. They are simply words which we use to indicate the result of our actions. And these actions are in turn predetermined by the characteristic of our thought. That's a very important core message from Charles Honnell, because in religious sectors, there's always this mentality of us against them. We're the good guys and they're the bad guys. Who are they? Anyone who doesn't believe what we believe. And fundamentally, even as a kid, I didn't think that was right. I never thought that was right. And when you subscribe to a religion, I don't want to bash religion, but I just want to see this from just a rational standpoint. Let's just think about this. In order to be a part of a certain religion, there's a doctrine. There's a thing that we do. Here's what we do. This is our doctrine, and every religion has it. Here's our traditions. Here's our book. Here's our symbols. Here's our codes and all these other things. And it produces it in us against them, because innately, if you're not a part of this church, then perhaps you think differently than us, and then you may be against us. And that goes for any organization. If you could be in a fraternity or a sports fan or something like that, we're the best team and these sorts of things. Good and evil was something that I thought about a lot in my religious days, but I don't think anything about it these days, because they're only, as Charles Honnell said, they're not entities. They don't really exist. It's just a concept of your mind. Because you could call something good today, and then a year from now, you could call the same thing evil. Why? Because you don't know the end. You do not know the end. A thing in and of itself is neither good or evil, but it's thinking that makes it so. Julius Caesar. So Honnell says, good and evil therefore are not entities. They are simply words which we use to indicate the result of our actions. We say, oh, this turned out good, so it must be good. This turned out bad, it must be evil. Let's get away. Let's go on a higher plane. Let's be observers. Let's move away from describing things as good and bad and black and white. Let's just observe and realize that ultimately, that everything works out for our good anyway. Ultimately, it does. If our thought is constructive and harmonious, we must manifest good. Again, if our thoughts are constructive and harmonious, we must manifest good. If it is destructive and of discord, then of course we're going to manifest evil. You'll readily see that what we think determines the quality of mind. What we see determines the quality of mind, and that the quality of mind in turn determines our ability and mental capacity. You can readily understand that the improvement in our ability will naturally be followed by increase in attainment and greater control of circumstances. So there's two things there I want to kind of bring out. You'll readily see that what we think determines the quality of mind. What we think. So what you think on a regular basis will determine your quality of mind. Have you ever met someone who you would categorize as either a very positive person or a very negative person, a very optimistic person or a very pessimistic person? That's what Honnell is talking about here. You've developed personality, but the personality came, but before the personality came just consistent thoughts, and then you developed it into behavior. So there's someone that you may know that always sees the good in things. I don't care what time of the day the phone rings, they always think it's good news. Now, conversely, there are people who, I don't care what time of the day it is, the phone rings, and they think it's bad news. That's the quality of mind. Now, the quality of mind in turn determines our ability and mental capacity. Our capacity to do what? To achieve, to obtain, to manifest. So it's important that you understand that whatever you habitually are thinking about, it is developing into behavior and behavior into your personality. So people may think of you, hey, that guy's really positive. That's why I like calling him, because I know I'm going to get positive feedback. I'm going to get some energy, good energy from him. And I just want to reach out to him and just kind of, bounce this question off the wall with him, because he's the type of guy that, no matter what day it is, he's consistent. I know I can reach out to him. He's not going to have an attitude. He's not going to be upset. He's not going to be too busy. And he's going to 9 times out of 10 provide a really good high energy answer to my question. That's the type of person that I am. I'm going to say that better. That's the type of person that I am and am always being and becoming. If you wish to bring about the realization of any desire from a mental picture of success in your mind by consciously visualizing your desire, in this way, you'll be compelling success. You'll be externalizing it in your life by scientific methods. We can only see what already exists in the objective world, but what we visualize already exists in the spiritual world. And this visualization is a substantial token of what will one day appear in the objective world if we are faithful to our ideal. That's really a summary of this entire book, if I'm being honest. What we see, we can only see what already exists. So if you follow Esther Hicks, or we call Abraham, she is very direct in terms of saying what exists is old news. So if you can see it, it's already done. It's absolutely already done. There's no use fighting against it. There's no use. You might as well embrace it, because it's a done deal. What you see today is your children of thoughts from yesterday or last week. Now, if you want to see a different tomorrow, you must now begin to impregnate your future, impregnate with those thoughts and positive feelings for tomorrow. Eckhart Tolle, who I also follow, who I think is an excellent leader as well, talks about not struggling, with the present moment. Understanding the value in surrender is very powerful. And I think for so long we've misunderstood, surrender, acceptance, and these sorts of things. It has always seemed to be somewhat less than, or we're giving up. And that's not the case. Surrender and acceptance to me means that you acknowledge what is, you acknowledge it, and you give it its right to exist. And you do not war against it. Why? Because it already is. There's absolutely nothing you're going to do to change what already is. Now, if you want to see difference in the future, then you have to use these scientific methods that Hanel is talking about. You must continue habitual positive thinking, and your thoughts will take you from where you are to where you want to be. So let's say, for example, that you are overweight. Well, if you look at yourself in the mirror and you begin to despise yourself because of what you look like, that is not going to help you at all. Don't war against what is. Why? Because it already is. You must accept that you are overweight. Accept it. You don't have to stay there. And that's the difference. That's what I think people think when you hear acceptance. You don't have to remain overweight. But when you begin to fight against yourself, it's not going to help you get to where you want to be. And it's going to create negative thought patterns. This is how people get into depression. It's because they think that they are not able to do a thing. I can't lose this weight. I'm unattractive. Nobody's going to want to date me. I'm never going to get married. I can't have kids. And these sorts of things. It's going to, go in a cycle out of control. But with accepting, what you're saying to yourself is, okay, I understand where I am. And if you apply these laws through the Master Key System, you can also say to yourself, I understand how I got here. I understand that my decisions, my thoughts about me got me to this place. I am the one who ate the food. I am the one that does an exercise. I am the one. Me. Why is that important? Because you're owning it, and you're keeping your power internally. Don't blame other folks. Don't go off on these tangents where you hear religious sects, the devil this and the devil. Listen, we'll get into to conceptually what the devil is and all sort of kind of stuff, but let's just keep it with you, because that's where your power is. Because if you can own that, you can also own the other side of the coin, which is, if I did this, then I can get myself to where I want to be. I can also make the decision to lose weight. I can also make the decision to get to where I want to be. So it's important that you keep your power. So if you wish to bring about the realization of any desire from a mental picture of success in your mind, by consciously visualizing your desire, it is in this way you'll be compelled to success, and it will externalize in the external world. Now, for your exercise this week, you want to bring yourself into a realization of the important fact that harmony and happiness are states of consciousness and do not depend upon the possession of things. Again, harmony and happiness are states of consciousness. States of consciousness, and they do not depend upon the possession of things. Living in the Western world is very hard to convince people of that, because everyone thinks the more wealth they have, the better off they're going to be, and they don't understand until they get it that those two things don't go together. They don't go together. You can be successful, have happiness, and have a very harmonious life, and not have the worry of huge, amounts of money and these sorts of things. Again, you want to your level of consciousness to rise as your level of abundance, financial abundance, rise. Why? Because then you'll be able to sustain it, and it will not suffer you. You don't want to suffer success. You don't want to suffer success, and it's exactly what it sounds like. So this week, what you want to do is come into the realization that harmony and happiness are states of consciousness. They don't depend upon possession of things, that things are effects, and they come as a consequence of correct mental states. So that if we desire material possession of any kind, our chief concern should be to acquire the mental attitude first, which will bring about the desired result. It's the attitude that matters. The mental attitude is brought about by a realization of spiritual nature and our unity with the universal mind, which is the substance of all things. This realization will bring about everything which is necessary for our complete enjoyment. Our complete enjoyment. You don't want to suffer your success. I've been waiting and waiting for this promotion. Now I'm finally vice president. Okay, you're vice president, and you never see your wife. You never see your kids. You're stressed out all the time. You're in that office from sun up to sundown. You don't want to suffer your success. What Hanel is saying here is get into the state of understanding that you are connected to universal mind, and you want the success to come in abundance, yes, but come in a way that you're going to enjoy and be complete enjoyment. When we succeed in bringing about this mental attitude, it is comparatively easy to realize our desire as an already accomplished fact. When we can do this, we shall have found the truth which makes us free from every lack or limitation of any kind. All right, so just 1 or 2 notes to take away. But again, I do thank you guys for joining us each week. I just feel like this is getting better and better. Again, to summarize for me, Hanel and the Master Key System was the first book, one of the first books that I read that really kind of put me on this path and changed my paradigm and all that good stuff. And I wanted to go in detail. I could have done one video that talked about the entire book, but because there's so much good information in the book and in the chapters and in this manual, the way it's written, I wanted to just break it out, because I feel like if you segment it, then you can really pay attention and move the way that Charles Hanel planned his lectures to go, and for his followers to, apply this information, because you can't do it all in one day. You cannot do it all in one day. This is a process. So this is the reason why I've broken it out this way. What then is the great business of life? Thinking. Why is this so? Because thought is spiritual and therefore creative. To consciously control thought It's a therefore to control circumstances, conditions, environments, and your destiny. That's the way we'll close it out today. Please check below in the description. I know we have free giveaways for you. Make sure you check us out on Facebook. Join our Facebook page there. I look forward to seeing you each and every week. Come back, check us out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. There's going to be a lot more information coming your way, different authors, different content. And it's all for one reason, and it's to take you to your true higher self, to really empower you, to empower your life, to get you to that life where you really want to be. Have a great day.